Create a gripping hook for this story to instantly grab the viewer's attention. The hook should be 3 to 4 sentences long. Find the most intriguing, dramatic, or unexpected moment in the plot, the one that sparks intense emotion and pulls the viewer in. It should be the kind of moment that makes people go, "Wait, what the hell happened next?" Describe it as if you're revealing the most important part of the story, but hold back the core reveal to maximize suspense. Use vivid descriptions to convey the atmosphere of that moment: fear, surprise, sorrow, awe, or tension. Make sure the viewer feels like they're right there in the scene, like it's unfolding in front of their eyes. Always end the hook with a sense of mystery. Hint at what comes next, but don't give it away. Leave the audience with a burning need to know more. Wrap up with a suspenseful line like, "But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything." But first, let's go back to the beginning. When my dad died, the grief didn't hit like a wave. It hit like silence, a kind of hollow quiet that settled deep in my bones. I wasn't thinking about accounts, assets, or estate papers. I was thinking about his laugh, loud, contagious, the kind that always came just before the punchline of a bad joke. I was thinking about how he taught me to change a tire in the rain, how he hugged me too long at airports, how he made pancakes every Sunday even when we were both grown enough to make our own. But in the days after the funeral, grief wasn't the only thing in the room. Diane, his second wife, started acting different, colder, shorter. The warmth she once wore like a mask at Christmas dinners and family cookouts vanished. She wasn't mourning. She was managing, calculating, moving with purpose, like a woman on a mission. A week after we laid him to rest, she called me. "No, how are you holding up? Just, the will's being read Monday, but there's no need for you to come. Your father handled everything for his real family." I remember the way she emphasized real, like I'd been a footnote in his story. I thought it was the grief talking. I wanted to believe she was just hurting, lashing out. But something inside me stirred, a quiet instinct I'd learned to trust. So I showed up anyway. The lawyer's office was in a brick building downtown. Stale coffee, carpet that hadn't been cleaned in a decade. Diane was already there when I arrived, sitting perfectly still, dressed in pearls and pressed gray wool. She held a manila folder in one hand, a smug little half-smile in the other. She didn't say hello. The lawyer, an older man with tired eyes and a nameplate that read Edward C. Palmer, Estate Services, gestured for us to sit. I did. My hands clenched tight in my lap. The air felt thick. And then he began reading. My father's voice filled the room, not literally, but through the carefully chosen words of the will. At first, it was what I expected: funeral arrangements, debt clearance, sentimental items. Then, everything else: the house, the retirement accounts, the land in Vermont. All of it left to Diane. My heart dropped into my stomach. She didn't even look at me, just straightened her posture like she'd won something. And in that moment, sitting under flickering fluorescent lights, hearing my father's legacy redirected like I'd never mattered, I realized something. This wasn't about grief anymore. It was about betrayal. And it had only just begun. The lawyer's voice was a monotone metronome, each word chipping away at the foundation of who I thought my father was. To his wife, Diane Whitaker, he leaves the entirety of his estate. The primary residence located at 542 Glendale Drive, all financial accounts in his name, and personal property including his 1967 Ford Mustang. My heart didn't sink. It collapsed. That Mustang wasn't just a car. It was ours. I spent every summer from age 10 with a wrench in my hand and grease under my fingernails helping him restore it. He used to say, "This'll be yours one day, kiddo." I believed him. Diane sat across from me, pearl necklace gleaming, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap like she was attending a tea party, not a legal ambush. She watched me with a smirk that was all sugar on the outside and venom just beneath. When the lawyer paused, she didn't wait. "He updated the will 2 months before he died," she said, tilting her head in mock sympathy. "I was there. He was thinking clearly. He wanted to make sure I was protected." Protected, as if I were the threat. The lawyer turned to me. "Any questions, Ms. Evans?" "Only 1,000. Why didn't my father tell me he changed the will? Why didn't anyone call? Why was I hearing this for the first time from a stranger in a gray suit?" But all I managed to say was, "No, not right now." I walked out of the office like I was moving through molasses, my pulse pounding in my ears. Everything I thought I understood about my family, my father, my place in his world, all of it felt suddenly paper thin, erased. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone like it might resurrect him. And then, for no real reason at all, I opened my voicemail. There it was. A message I hadn't listened to yet, dated just 3 weeks before he passed. "Hey, kiddo. Just checking in. Listen, don't worry about Diane. I made sure you're covered. You'll understand when the time comes." My breath caught. There was something. A sliver of light in all this darkness. I called Mr. Palmer the next morning and said, "I need the full will, every page, unredacted." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I'm done being blindsided," I said. When the file landed in my inbox, I combed through every line. And then, there it was, buried deep in the legal dust. The contingency clause. Diane may have thought she won, but the game was far from over. The office was colder that day. Or maybe it was just me. I sat across from Diane, her perfume already too loud for the small space. She wore her usual mask, polite, aloof, untouchable, as if the will reading was just a formality, as if she'd already won. But I had the clause. It sat folded in my bag like a weapon waiting to be drawn, not just ink on paper, but my father's final line of defense. His voice from beyond, calculated and precise. Mr. Palmer, the estate attorney, greeted us with the usual civility, but there was a different weight to his tone. He opened the leather folder slowly, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. Not the entire will, just the clause. His voice was measured, but each word hit like a hammer on glass. "If any beneficiary named herein should act in bad faith toward another beneficiary, including but not limited to intentional concealment, undue influence, or interference with the reading and execution of this will, said beneficiary's inheritance shall be considered forfeited and reassigned to the alternate recipient listed herein." That recipient was me. At first, Diane didn't move. Her smile held, but it twitched. "What is this?" she asked, too sharply. This wasn't in the original draft. Mr. Palmer didn't even look up. "Your husband added it 4 weeks before his passing. The update was notarized. You were present when it was signed." Her face went pale, not instantly but in slow motion, like color draining down a canvas. "He didn't mean that," she whispered. "I didn't do anything wrong. You told his daughter, your stepdaughter, to skip the will reading because, and I quote, 'there's nothing there for you.' You attempted to withhold legal notification of the estate distribution. That qualifies as bad faith. She didn't need to be there. I was protecting her. She was grieving. You actively concealed the full document. That's more than protection. That's obstruction." Diane blinked rapidly, her breath quickening. She wasn't just losing the house, the car, the accounts. She was losing the illusion that she could control this. She looked at me then, for the first time not with pity or annoyance, but panic. real panic. I didn't think he'd. But the clause didn't care what she thought. It didn't care about excuses or performance. It only cared about intent. And her intent had been crystal clear. She hadn't just tried to take what wasn't hers. She'd tried to erase what was mine. And now, my father had erased her instead. The silence in the house wasn't heavy. It was clean. Like something had been scrubbed away. A presence, a shadow, a lie. Diane was gone, legally evicted by court order. Her bags packed in haste, her voice shrill in protest that no one listened to. It was like the walls had stopped echoing her entitlement the moment the front door clicked shut behind her. The transfer of assets was swift. The accounts froze under court direction. The car keys, my father's prized 1969 Mustang, were returned to my possession. The deed to the house was updated with my name. There were no more battles, no more games. The law had spoken, and for once, it had spoken clearly. I walked through each room of the house slowly, like retracing memories with my fingertips. The living room still smelled faintly of the cedar cleaner my dad used. The same recliner sat by the window, worn at the arms from years of use. But what struck me most was the absence. Not of people, but of pretense. This place, once polluted with Diane's false warmth and silent superiority, now felt honest. Raw. Mine. I stood in front of the fireplace and looked up at the photograph we'd placed there the day after the funeral. My father, smiling in a Navy baseball cap, arm draped around my shoulders during a camping trip we took before Diane ever came into our lives. The photo was faded, but the feeling behind it hadn't dimmed. "Don't worry about Diane," he'd said in that final voicemail. "You'll understand." And now I did. Not just the paperwork, not just the clause, but why he'd done it. He'd known her, better than I did. He'd seen her ambition, her need for control, and he'd acted quietly, like he always had, protecting what mattered without ever making a show of it. Justice didn't come in a courtroom. It didn't arrive with flashing lights or applause. It came in the form of a clause. 78 words buried at the bottom of a page that spoke louder than anything she ever said to my face. It came in the stillness of a house finally free from pretending. It came in the way I stood there, not angry, not vengeful, just grounded. Because when someone tries to erase your place in your own family and fails, that's not revenge, that's justice.